things is that how do you sum all these things up? Is that there's many sides to Tom, and perspective, I think, is very important in everything. And I use this bottle cap right here to give you a little idea of all these speakers. Is that if you look at this bottle cap straight on, it's a line. So that's a wrestling to me. That's who I look at Tom. I knew him as a wrestler, okay? And he came into a fraternity. But if you tilt it a little bit, it's now no longer a line. It's a what? It's an oval. And if I tilt it all the way up, it's a what? It's a circle, okay? And this is what Tom is, right? It's a perspective, is that you're going to hear different things from business to friend to wrestler. And we all look at him in a different way. But in essence, he is this bottle cap. He's all these things combined, right? And so I think that's very, very special. Another thing that I think important is to share his perspective, because all of us have things that are very, very special about Tom. Right? First time I met him at the Southern Scuffle. He came up to me. I didn't know him from anybody, and he started telling me what we needed to do to get better. So, okay. And that big booming voice, I said, yeah, who is this guy? Right? And over the course of time, things developed, and we got to be very good friends. And at the same time, it became very important because he adopted us. We didn't necessarily adopt him. Is that he basically said he was going to help the Gophers, and boom, we had him. We were stuck with him. I mean, it's just who he is. But he, like moss on a tree, it grows on you. But when my mom passed away, there was a time, and a person spoke about what are called blue moments, and it kind of anchored in me. And these blue moments are things that they're things that happen in your life. And Brian talked a little bit about them, and everybody else will talk about them. Is that there are moments in your life that you're truly alive. There are things that you remember, and as you sit here and you reflect, there's things in your life that happen, these blue moments, and you don't know why they really stick with you, right? But they do. They just stick with you, and they become alive. They become a part of you. And these blue moments are kind of like a chain of pearls that go through your life. And so all of us, as we're sitting in here, and as this bottle cap, we all have different perspective of who Tom was, how he impacted us in a different way. And what I'd like to do for just a minute here, okay, and I think this is important, is that in our lives, and I'm speaking for myself, we get so rushed, right? We have so many things to do. Is we have to be here, we have to be there, we have to be at a funeral, and then we go. But we don't spend time to really reflect, okay? To reflect on what's going on. And people bring this in. So I would like to just for about a minute, right? Everybody just shut their eyes, right? And I would like to think back of how you remember Tom, okay? And how he came into your life. And what special thing when Tom Caron's name is raised pops into your head. So for some of you, it'll be many things. For some, it'll be one or two. But I think reflection is a very important thing. So the way I knew Tom, I knew him as a wrestler. And it's interesting in reading his bio, he either started or helped part of 26 companies. We never talked about that. Now, as Brian said about two right wings and a left, I pretty much knew where Tom stood on politics. It was a pretty simple thing. So, and we thought a lot alike. So we touched on that from time to time. But the one place that we did connect, right? And we all connected in different places as a wrestler. What it is to be a wrestler and what a platform. And that's something that once you enter our fraternity as a wrestler, and it's no different than anybody else. It can be church and friendship for different groups. You're that forever. Tom was a wrestler forever. And he many times reflected back to me on how wrestling impacted his life. In all the talks he had, he was always reflecting on wrestling did this for me, wrestling helped me with this. One thing that he said constantly was this, as he goes, this probably helped me more in business than in wrestling, as he said. One of the biggest things I learned from wrestling is, okay, if it doesn't work, stop doing it. Okay? And if you're a heavyweight like he is and you're shooting and you're getting crushed, okay, you pretty quickly figure out, I'm not going to do this. So if you watch heavyweights today, they don't do anything. Okay? Because every time they shoot, they get taken down. So they figured it out. Tom was ahead of the curve. Right? He was a wrestler in high school. He was a two-time NIC runner-up. He qualified for the NAI national tournament. And he said, in his directness and his kind of bluntness, I guess you would say, he said, why didn't he win the NIC conference? He said, because I couldn't beat the other guy. There were no excuses. It was just, couldn't beat the other guy. And he was very, very honest about those kind of things. And he did a lot of things, and he talked about a lot of things. And he said about when he was a wrestler, he was listing some of the things he learned. He said, I learned discipline and hard work. Okay, how to deal with adversity. When you get beat up, he said wrestling is so different than other sports, Jay. He said, in football, I got knocked down in about 20 seconds, and then it was over. In basketball, they put points up on me. But if you weren't any good in wrestling, you get beat up. And you get beat up for an hour and a half. And it's no fun. But in order to go back, I learned that if I went back, I could get better and better and better. And he continued to do that the entire time. Okay? But one of the amazing things about Tom is when he adopted us at the University of Minnesota is he had this love of wrestling and that he wanted to help. And there's so many things, and I'm not so sure of all the people realizing what he did, is he helped raise $250,000 trying to bring wrestling back to Winona. Right? And being from there, you would think that that's where his love and allegiance would be, but he helped Bethany College, Winona, North Dakota, Minnesota, USA Wrestling, all these things because of what wrestling did. And it's different because wrestling is a very unique thing, right? To tell you what, is that the giving back of wrestling is really kind of different because the things that we learn as wrestling, there's really never a team deal in it. You always look at wrestling as what? You sum wrestling up as, did I get on the podium? Okay? And Tom wasn't like that. He would help anybody that needed help. All those schools he helped. Right? And he was very special that way. And so what he's done, one of the things that he's done is he set up an endowment. And the endowment is to help wrestling way beyond. I think that his impact as a wrestler, and we all look at our impact as a wrestler as one thing, but what he did while he was here, helping all these schools and helping athletes try and make Olympic and world teams, that thing goes beyond, right, just being a wrestler. And he set up an endowment in his and Ann's name to fund USA Wrestling and to fund young wrestlers, as well as age limits down to 5 years old, to learn the things that he learned. And I think that's the beauty, right, about Tom, is that I think that people impact their lives while they're here and just doing things. And if you think of the Bread Baron and all the things that he did business-wise, and sometimes a lot of those things end. But I think that the impact that he has had in wrestling, and by starting this endowment and helping and fund USA Wrestling and all these schools, it's going to impact young people's lives forever. And I don't think there's a greater thing that you can do than impacting other people's lives. The other thing is, Brian was talking about a friend. I considered him a friend. About 3 years ago, I had a very super bad, I don't know if you'd call it, a bad deal with my knee. It got infected, almost lost my leg, came close to dying. Tom wanted to come up and see me, and I basically didn't want to see anybody. And I said, no, don't come. What do you think he did? What choice did I have? Right? But that's who he was, and that's why we loved him. And that's the special thing that he brings here today, is that, like this bottle cap, he's different to all of us. He's all brought us something very special. He brought things to me as a wrestler and a coach to help, but he also brought things to me as a friend. As a friend that you try to be tough, and here comes this guy with this big booming voice. And it's an interesting, I will miss that voice, because the first time we were at the Southern Scuffle and I heard him yelling, someone is stolen, okay? And I'm going, who is that guy? And pretty soon we found out who it was. And then at any duel meet, no matter where we were around the country, if you heard, the guy's stolen, I would look over at the bench beside me and said, I guess Tom's here. And that's who he was to us. Okay? He was a wrestler to me and he was a friend. And I'll miss him and I'll miss that voice. But I have those blue moments, those special times that I remember the things that he did with me and for our program, and they will be with us forever. Thank you.